Seven, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Josh from Chicago.
Hey, Josh from Chicago. Does everyone on Zoom?
Yes.
Jamie, Matt, you hear it?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Go ahead, Josh, in Chicago.
Well, first, thanks for doing these like Thursday shows with the interviews, because a lot of these interviews were actually before my time listening to Majority Report. So I get to like catch up and stuff like that. And it's really cool. So thanks.
Right. Not to be biased or anything, but I would check out anything pre-October 2015. I would say that's the glory days of the Majority Report.
Is there a reason why that? Or
because that's I was on the show until then.
Oh, yeah. Of course, not too biased at all. But I wanted to talk about, I guess, something that I've had that sort of occurred to me in a sort of confrontation I got with sort of a centrist friend of mine. How do you guys, and maybe you all can talk about this in your own specific ways, how have you all handled talking about defunding the police with your sort of more centrist or even more conservative friend? Because basically my friend wrote this sort of puff piece about how defunding the police, pushing these quote unquote good police chiefs out. And when I got into him sort of with like I know. And like,
I too was really worried about the good police chiefs. All 0.0001% of them. Yeah.
It's like when I got into it with him, like if I just didn't say defunding the police, but if I said we should put more resources into social services and stuff like that, he seemed to be okay with it. But as soon as you use the words defunding or taking away like $3 billion, people freak out and they think it's like crime is going to rise, which of course we know, given didn't the police go on strike here in New York for like a weekend and crime went down?
Yes, that's true. But then also they bring up how now crime is going up a bit in New York because the police have taken their hands off of certain matters. That is obviously not 100% accurate, being that there's a lot more things going on than usual. For example, mass unemployment due to a ongoing pandemic. I mean, they really don't account for to be quite frank, the idea that society is still going on pretty much almost completely as normal during this unprecedented time period in modern history is just, to me, shocking enough as its own. I mean, I would actually expect the world to completely change over like that, and we're not seeing that. So to me, that's the real surprise, not the fact that there's been a few more shootings and a few more robberies than normal. I mean, that to me is not. I mean, we should be saying, "Holy crap!" The fact that's all that's happened is miraculous.
Yeah, and the NYPD has not been defunded, by the way.
No. Was it 324 million, which is like pennies?
And a lot of it was moved around, basically.
It was just reallocated.
What they did in this city is they just no longer considered the school police officers to be allocated under the NYPD budget.
Yeah.
And de Blasio had a report last week when he said that 22,000 city workers were going to have to be laid off, and none of those would be police. So
there are not any fewer cops on the streets because of this.
Right. They're getting rid of EMTs. Their EMTs are being cut. Education budgets are being cut. Every corner is being cut, literally, except the NYPD.
But this isn't necessarily about what's going on in New York. He's talking about generally how you talk to a centrist. And I think like things you actually do is emphasize, one, that we under-investigate and over-police. So that basic thing needs to be changed. But also, like at a certain point, if he thinks that the cops need to have these massive like investments of like Department of Defense equipment and spy equipment and like I don't think everybody agrees with that. I don't think that's a very popular position, actually. So I think you focus on these budgets are just ridiculously bloated in this country. I mean, this is more complicated in other countries where they haven't even had enough money to bloat their police budgets. But in this country, that's where we just put excess taxpayer cash. And that's a huge pinata we can hit. And I mean, Austin did pass a pretty substantial cut to their police budgets, there'll be real world data towards this, some of this stuff. I mean, not the full measures, but partial measures that we'll be able to point to. But I think that's kind of a fear response. And I don't know that I don't know if
Josh,
rationalize it away.
Well, it depends
Josh,
on
your
the
friend
too.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Josh, is your friend, you're talking about a Trump supporter, or are you talking about someone?
He's like a middle of the road Biden supporter. He probably voted for Biden in the primary.
All right, so here's a good way.
He lives in Dallas too.
So here's a good way. I think this is probably someone that this would work for. They probably, don't demonize the mentally ill. So you could basically say, I find this works. I've seen this come up in conversation. Why is the NYPD because a lot of these calls for the NYPD are to deal with people with mental health issues.
Yes. So
why are untrained cops being sent to deal with these mental health issues? A, you're putting the mentally ill in danger, and B, you're also putting the police officers in danger. Now, I know that's not a conversation really where, the people on the left would really put as number one, but for someone in the center who's worried about the cops and, another group that has, most people have empathy for, I think that's a great way to bring it up. There should be budget taken from the NYPD allocated to mental health professionals who get sent to deal with these calls. Again, big percentage of these calls are to deal with the mentally ill. And that's where you get the cuts from the NYPD. And that's how I think you could start that conversation with them and possibly win them over.
Yeah, I've heard of a number of incidents actually where the cops were called because somebody was threatening to kill themselves and then the cops ended up killing that person.
I mean, yeah, I know people who've had siblings where it's a mental health episode and with like an alcohol involved, and the cops come and drag him down a bunch of stairs, hitting his head the entire way. Like, I think that is a very smart thing, like Binder. I think that's because people can relate to that too. Everybody knows somebody who like has issues like that, and you don't want a cop coming to with a gun with his hand on his holster being the one to respond to that.
Yeah.
There was literally just a case right here in Queens about literally like 5 to 10 minutes away from me where cops were called because there was a dispute with an upstairs neighbor and a downstairs neighbor. The downstairs neighbor was a person with mental health issues, and they were playing with a sword. And the cop showed up, and this person was in their house too. So it wasn't like they were roaming the streets with a sword. Cops show up, see the person in their house with the sword. They even get told by the upstairs neighbor that we know that we're calling the cops, but we know that they have mental health issues. So please wait for his mom and proceed with caution because his mom was out. They get him to actually put the sword down. He comes out and just gets upset because they're arresting him in his own house. And they tase him 7 times. He was completely unarmed. He died. He literally died right there from getting tased 7 times.
God.
It's ridiculous. It shouldn't have happened in any way, shape, or form. They shouldn't have been sent there. They shouldn't have treated him the way they did. They were unexperienced and untrained to deal with that issue, and it resulted in someone losing their life. And for someone like your friend, one of the cops could have lost their lives too. So there we go.
Yeah. It's funny because like when I talked with him about like just like putting more funding in, he's for putting more funding, but like when you bring up defunding the police, it's weird because that's how you would put the more funds into social services, is by funding the police.
What does he think about the drug war?
To be fair, we're going to need to make up the difference because part of why we have a giant carceral state to begin with is because it's much, much cheaper, even a bloated carceral state, than properly funding all of these social programs that would fight the root causes of crime and inequality.
What does your friend think of the drug war, though? Because that's, I mean, a huge, even centrist should be against that at this point.
That's something that could go either way, so it's interesting. Yeah.
I think he's for like marijuana. He doesn't think people should be arrested for marijuana. His thing is like, he thinks if you defund the police, there'll be violent criminals on the street, essentially. I think as far as the drug war, it's a nonviolent. It's a lot of these people are being locked up for nonviolent crimes. I don't think he's a big fan of that. But again, it's like how you stop the drug war is also by defunding the police.
I mean, the police aren't really stopping crime before it happens. Well, they do that illegally sometimes, yes. But I'm talking about
police
like
really
sort of.
don't.
I'm talking about like these violent issues that your friend's probably talking about. It's not like someone's roaming the streets saying, "Man, if only the cops weren't here, I would commit some violent crimes." No, that's not that's not what it happens. That's not what happens at all. They
almost never stop a violent crime in progress. That's extremely rare. That is not what the cops do. And if you want some statistics on that, the Alex Vitale book, The End of Policing, he was on Majority Report recently, is full of really good data. That's what I like about it, right? Because, libs love data. It's full of data on all of the ways in which the cops do not actually produce public safety. And the only way to increase safety is to decrease the police's contact with the public. This can be done by decriminalizing things like drug offenses. It could be done by decriminalizing sex work. It could be done by reducing the number of cops and shrinking their role in society and crowding them out with all of these other social services that take care of people in better, less violent ways. But like, if you want to deal with violent,
I was going to say that's what Jamie's famous for, loving that data. That's why we call her Jamie 538 Peck. Right?
That's me. Go to Jamie 3030. I'm just hacking. I'm hacking some data all day long. Just hacking a course through the data forest with my data.
Jamie Silver.
Yeah, that's me. Oh my God. That's funny. But yeah, like the data calls for abolition. I'm sorry. It just does. I don't know how to approach your friend. You probably know better than I do. But we really need to challenge the idea that the police serve the purpose of keeping us safe, because they don't. The police serve the purpose of keeping surplus populations, which is an incredibly racialized population in this country, beaten down and oppressed so that they don't cause trouble. They exist to protect private property. And if they ever do anything good, and I'm not saying no cop has ever done anything good, but that is purely incidental to the actual purpose that these institutions serve.
Yeah, I think the data thing is actually a good idea, because the way he thinks, he's very, he looks at a lot. He's very analytical about like data and stuff like that. So that's probably a good tactic. But all these are really good suggestions, and I appreciate your input and thoughts on this.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Cheers.
All right, let's go.